going to put the computer on the floor.
Yeah. To make sure it's not something that you can for the you know, fix this one.
If not, we can put it on.
No, I think we should be also do one way this. Put it in that this row. Same thing with my student, am I right? You need incentive to do the right thing, right? Yeah. They're learning well. Are the kids?
I mean, we can switch.
Good. Yeah.
Do you want to switch? Yeah, well, I need my stuff to fit, so the cord is short.
Oh my God. And how you love the sister? One of these days, her sister is the next one.
Oh, all right. Yeah, why not?
I don't know if it was a good idea to bring both sisters at the same time. Probably not. Probably. So, I'll have you. It's always a we are so grateful. Yes, we try for our kids. Exactly, it is that's a full. Thank you so much, appreciate it. This is our son, and you know Patrick, yeah.
Staying secret. Yeah, I don't think that's not.
Oh, okay.
I did talk to
That's right.
and then we're back.
If no one kicks it off.
As long as the camera stays on the stage.
Oh, yes.
All right, and y'all will be back. So you'll be back.
This is my.
Okay.
And then we're gonna monitor it to make sure nothing's wrong.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
No, my student, my high school is for a good reason. They don't want any additional.
And by then, if someone comes back and there's so much more figures, we're gonna be done with that.
No, I checked. So the business is.
So don't like cautious side.
Yep. Okay. Got it. On it. Thanks, both.
Hey, Patrick, you still play that funniest sport that my next door neighbor is good coaching? Is this now? How long have you been here? You're first, are you first student? Are you the first student?
We are,
That's one we have to look at. Do you need another chair?
No, we just need four because Dimitri's gonna zoom in.
Oh, it's so good.
Sorry,
Steven.
And then you.
She's like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you guys.
No.
So, yeah. So, yeah, this did. Certainly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Although, you know, it's not usually like these. Something that could be related to your conference.
Hello. Just so you know, I need it reset.
Oh, no.
So that's my okay. I told you they come in the last. Yeah, but otherwise, that's their own. So that's why they're being like. Well, that's not fun.
The flyer has you.
Which is fine. Yeah, it's no big deal. And there's no time reason. I just want them to like form a plan. Keep them on their toes. Well, let's have some regular meetings with like alumni or people who do things that they are doing.
I got the interview.
Oh, did I do it? Congratulations. Okay. That's great. Yes, with both of us, one of us, all of it. Just look at my schedule and remember that out front. Although it has to be. Yeah, and you. Great. Absolutely graduation.
Really exciting now.
I gotta change this one to one.
Oh,
Not
really?
two. Yeah, you made it old. I'm the oldest guy here.
I thought I got that off LinkedIn, but maybe. Oh, one, okay.
Make sure this way. See, as economists, we can't predict the future. Yeah.
Okay, now first let me ask you.
Oh, we did like 2 minutes ago, they said very nice.
Oh my gosh. Here, Stephen.
Thanks.
You're sharing the spotlight. Dimitri, who's maybe going to zoom in. We're hoping going to zoom in. Hey, Marissa.
Thanks again for the space. That was awesome.
It's the alumni building.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming this afternoon. My name is Ingrid Peterson, and I work in the Career Education Center, and I worked with your econ professors to get our panelists. And as I was just telling Professor Manrajan, I invited 5 panelists, and 5 panelists said yes. So that just tells you how much I think so many of our alums love St. Michael's College and want to do something to give back.
And we didn't have to bribe them or give them an economic incentive, by the way.
Well, I didn't, but I don't know what Reza did. And Dmitry Repnikov is out in San Francisco and he's zooming in, so he has not yet appeared, but when he does, we will get him up on the screen. So I'm really just here to do a couple of things. One, to tell you that there are some light refreshments in the back, so if you want something, please feel free to go ahead. And then I have a sign-in sheet that I'm going to send around. If you all could please get signed in, I would appreciate it. I also have bios for the panelists, although I have to apologize to Jackie because for some reason I made her class of 02 and she's class of 12, and that's a big difference once you graduate. So I don't know quite how that happened, but it did. So I'm just going to make very brief introductions because they're really going to talk about their own story and tell you kind of how they left here and got to where they are now. And for some of them, that journey has only been a year or two, and for others, it's been a couple more than that. So it'll be interesting to kind of find out what possible career paths so many of them have taken, and maybe open up your eyes to see what some opportunities are that you hadn't considered before. So Stephen Anderson, class of 2017, is at Citizens Bank and was ever so lovely to drive up from Boston yesterday and spend the day here today and join us tonight. Emily Farnham Haskell, class of 2012, is here from National Life Group down in Montpelier. I don't know if you live down in Montpelier.
I live in Williston.
Live in Williston, so you're coming home.
Yep, exactly.
You're on your way home tonight. Jackie Tuttle, class of 2012, is from Putnam Investments in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Boston.
Oh, you're in Boston.
Yep. The headquarters is in Boston. I'm in the Hanover office.
Okay. All right. So you also came up a ways.
Drove up.
Dimitri, don't start picking your nose.
Oh my
I
gosh.
hope that's a legal trip.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jackie, for making that drive as well. And Marissa Wagner, class of 2017, who, in addition to being an econ major and other things that I'm sure she did on campus, also worked in our office for a period of time. So it's great to have her here. And Dimitri, all the way from San Francisco. Dimitri, can you hear me?
It might
The
get a job.
microphone says.
He's been muted.
Yes.
They're working on it.
There.
Hey, Dimitri, can you hear me?
Oh.
We can't hear you. Hang on a second.
We're gonna want to.
Figuring out our technical issues. Thanks for your patience, everyone, while we figure this out. Carly, should we go ahead and get started while you're
I
working?
think that's a good idea. I think-
Okay, all right. I don't want to hold everybody up. I like to start things as close to on time as I can. So let's go ahead and get started. Stephen, do you mind kind of kicking things off for us and
Yeah, I can do
giving
that.
us a little bit of your story?
Sure. Stephen Anderson, class of 2017. I was an econ major and almost a math minor. I took the right amount of classes, just not the right classes, which I found out after. So after graduating in 2017, I started working like 2 weeks later at Citizens Bank as a credit analyst, which kind of means that I was a loan underwriter, is sort of what that is, which means that I was working with companies who need capital from banks, and I was in charge of how do I want to put this? I was in charge of seeing how their past results have translated into what we think their future earnings will be. So a lot of projections and a lot of understanding what their risks were. So I would write up a sort of like a credit proposal summary, and there would be a talk about it with both the portfolio manager and then a lot of the credit people who would be signing off on giving these people however much money. It started out in the first group I was in, anywhere from 200,000 up to about 50 million. And with the group I'm in now, the smallest loan outstanding we have is about 25 million. And we just got approval to commit 750 million to one company, which was one of the bigger deals we've ever done with Citizens Bank, which is cool. So we would have these discussions after I wrote up my paper about the company and how I thought that they would do. And a lot of times that was me presenting, because a lot of the people that I work with don't have time to read every single word that I write. So there's a lot of presentations that I would have to give that were sort of like the 2-minute spiel of the 2-week-long paper that I just worked on. Which is good. It was good to like be able to know exactly what it is that I wrote. Like to be able to know that as well as you can, is like a sign of that is that you can boil that down into something really small, which is good. And so actually recently in the past 2 months, I was promoted to be a portfolio manager, which means that I no longer am doing all of the sort of grunt work by myself. I now sort of oversee a portfolio of companies, like larger public companies that are current clients of ours and a lot of prospect clients. And I will go with our relationship managers or our salespeople, meet them, and sort of start the whole credit risk process over again and write up my papers and get approvals. So it's kind of the spiel on what I do.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Emily.
All right, my name is Emily Farnham Haskell. I graduated in 2012 with degrees in math and economics. And I work at National Life now. I've worked there since the day after I graduated full time, and I interned there for a year before I started full time. But to kind of pull it back a little bit, when I was here at St. Mike's summers between my freshman and sophomore year and sophomore and junior year, I did REUs, so research experience for undergrads in math type subjects, thinking I wanted to go on and get, a master's or maybe a PhD in math. By the time I was going into my senior year, I kind of had thought, I'm not so sure about that anymore. I think I want to get some real life experience and try something new. So that was when I got an internship at National Life with the actuaries doing product development. I had a big in with that because of a St. Mike's alum. So it was a very competitive program, and I was able to be put in touch with St. Mike's professors here with someone who worked there currently and kind of really helped me get my foot in the door. And I interned for a summer full-time as an actuary intern, and then a couple days a week my first semester of my senior year. It was around that time that I started to really think about what I wanted to do after graduation. I worked with the Career Services Center and got a list of a whole bunch of alumni that worked in areas I thought I might be interested in, and in the areas of the country I thought I might be interested in working. And I ended up reaching out to and having good conversations with a number of alumni, one of which actually turned into a Skype interview and then an in-person interview and a job offer at PwC in Boston, just from an initial email kind of saying, what do you do? I'm looking kind of for what careers I can do after I graduate from college. Around the same time, word kind of started to spread at National Life a little bit that I wasn't so interested in doing all these actuary exams that would come with staying with the actuaries, which is what I interned with, but that I was kind of looking for other jobs. And it was at that point that someone on the illustrations team reached out and started having conversations with me about life after college as well. So it was at that point that I decided I really wanted to stay in Vermont. I really wanted to stay at National Life, so I took the job at National Life. I worked for about 5 years doing testing of our illustration system. So what our illustration system is if you're looking to buy a life insurance policy, an agent would come to your house and they would pull out, their phone at this point, or when I started working even, it had to be a laptop, and they could run you a quote on the illustration system. So it includes a UI, it includes calcs, it includes a report. And my team designs, develops in some cases, maintains, tests, implements that system. So I started by doing a lot of the testing, training of the system to the different users that used our illustration system for about the first 5 years of my career. And then a few years ago, I transitioned into doing more of the designing and developing of the output. So if you get this illustration run for you, you then get like a 30-page output that states, what your values could be and different assumptions on index growth, disclosures based on what state you're in, salesy pages so agents can try to sell you on this policy. And now I design and develop those pages. And I'm actually a co-developer now with our vendor who developed the UI and the calcs. So that's what I do now, kind of my spiel. And we do have some openings on our team for any people who are looking for jobs. Feel free to connect with me after and we can talk further if that sounds like something you might be interested in.
Thanks, Emily.
I'm Jackie Tuttle. I graduated in 2012 with degrees in economics and math, similar to Emily. And When I graduated, I moved right out to Madison, Wisconsin. It was a job I had found via my math advisor at the time. Her daughter had just started working at this company called Epic. I'm like, what a great company name. I'd love to work there. They have a slide in one of their buildings. Sounds great. Sign me up. I was a software developer on their oncology module. They develop electronic medical record software. And so each area of the hospital sort of has their own module. Fletcher Allen uses them. So if you've ever been there, you've been inputted into Epic software. I spent 2 years there, didn't really love it. It was a lot of time behind a computer screen, and as much as I thought I loved computer science when I was here at St. Mike's, did not enjoy making a career out of it. So I left that opportunity, stayed in Madison to work at an insurance company called CUNA Mutual Group. They provide insurance for credit unions and their members. And I started off on their property and casualty team as the liaison between the actuaries and the IT department. So when actuaries need changes made, they don't necessarily speak IT, and IT doesn't necessarily speak actuary. And so I helped the two groups kind of get together, figure out what they actually need, and work that relationship between the two groups. After a year of that, I was promoted into what we called our account profitability group. And so as I mentioned, I was in the property and casualty group before. We also had life, and then I forget what the third one was at this time, but none of those three systems spoke to each other. And so if we wanted to raise rates on a credit union in one silo, they might pull all three silos of business from us, even though they were performing really well profitability-wise for CUNA and the other two. And so account profitability was used to make sure that we don't lose valuable clients just because one area isn't doing well. That granted me a lot more exposure. I really like that because I could see all over the organization and had a lot more involvement. Loved that company, that position, but I had to travel home 12 times in 1 year. That was rather expensive. So I decided to move back to the East Coast. Once I moved back to the East Coast, I found this position at Putnam Investment. It is an investment firm based in Boston, Massachusetts. They have another office in Andover, Mass, which is where I work, supporting their sales desk as a reporting analyst. My team is the business development strategy team, and we focus on 3 pillars. The first of which is engagement strategy. This is making sure that we are talking to the right financial advisors at the right time about the right product. We have consultants out in the field meeting with financial advisors many times a day. We want to make sure that they're speaking with people who are worth their time. And so they know their territories well, and so we aren't necessarily that appreciated for giving them good leads. They think they know all the leads themselves, but we also think it's just as important to tell them who not to talk to. You shouldn't be spending your time at this branch because there just isn't an opportunity for sales there. Our second pillar is sales enablement, and this is all of the technology. So whether it is Salesforce itself, where you're touch pointing all of your engagement with financial advisors, or ways to make touch pointing these activities easier, whether it is, we have one called Hey Dan, where you can call in and leave a message, it will be transcribed into a note, or you can click and drag emails and that email will be touch pointed in the system. All of these are part of my team's responsibility to make sure they're installed correctly, they run smoothly. If there are any issues, we are who they come talk to. We're in the process of implementing a new commission software. Right now, I calculate commissions for our 120-person sales force in Excel. The auditors are not big fans of that. So we're hoping that with this new software, it will just be a lot smoother, and we'll not spend a week and a half every month doing this, and the auditors will be happy. Our final pillar is business transformation, and this is accelerating our technology use and making sure that we are not only sequencing who we should be talking to, but how we should be interacting with them, so that it's not just you should talk with advisor A, it's you should email advisor A, or you should meet with him in person, or host a branch luncheon for him. So I am busy doing that right now. We've got a data science team that does a lot of that work, but similar to when I was at CUNA, the data science team doesn't necessarily speak investment sales, and investment sales doesn't necessarily speak data science. So having a little bit of knowledge of both, I act as a nice go-between for those two groups.
Great, thanks, Jackie. Marissa.
So I want to start my little talk with asking you guys a question for reflection. And I'm a recent grad, so I kind of had a lot of ideas about what would happen post-graduation. But I just want to know, kind of get in your minds, what do you guys think that first year after graduation is going to look like? Like, do you have a plan? Do you have an image in your mind? Because, I kind of did, and it just didn't turn out that way. So, as Ingrid introduced me, my name is Marissa Wagner, and I'm here to talk about that journey from post-graduation to now. And I hold my time at St. Mike's, and specifically with the econ department, very dear in my heart. Tara is like a great friend of mine. So I graduated with an economics degree and a minor in environmental studies. And I think when I initially graduated, I had, really mastered school. Like, I was really good at school. But in terms of entering the workforce, I was pretty nervous. But I can say now and hold my head high that I'm, on a good path, with great people at a great company, and, excited for the future. So I currently work actually down the road in Colchester, Vermont, at a company called Vermont Information Processing. Super interesting title. I'm going to call it VIP for short, because we're very important people. But VIP is a data collections and software development company for the beverage industry. So it was founded in 1972. There were 6 employees that started there, and since then, I think we're up to over 400 now out of our Colchester office. So when the company initially started, they were focused on specifically the distributors within this 3-tier industry. So after the prohibition, the government decided that there is a 3-tier system where the distributor is basically the middleman. So initially, VIP started with the decision to basically help that middleman organize invoices and provide any sort of sales analysis that they could. So actually in 2001, they decided to leverage their position in that industry and really start supplying that data to suppliers, because before they didn't have that data. So we actually signed our first customer, Heineken, in 2001. And then now in 2019, we have, like I said, over 400 employees. We have between 850 and 900 suppliers. And between all of those suppliers, specifically the beer ones, they distribute over 95% of the beer within the United States. So we're talking like Miller Coors, Anheuser-Busch, little smaller craft guys like Sierra Nevada and Dogfish, and then, other large brands. So we're a fairly big company, and I'm not surprised if you guys have never heard of them, because I never did before I applied there. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting company. So as far as my current position, I am on the supplier side of things. So I'm in the SRS implementation team. This is my 3rd role since I started with the company in May of 2017, so it's right after graduation. I was previously, my 2 previous roles before I landed here were focused solely on data validation. And I think what kind of landed me there was senior year, my thesis. I had just been working with a data set that was like insane, and basically just got me intrigued in that, and I was good at it, and I was like, okay, let's go through this. So I started there, and then just, I think through my work ethic and my drive, they kind of just noticed that, this girl has potential, and, just having a good work ethic really put me on the right track in terms of management noticing me, and so now I'm here. Basically, my current position is I work with net new suppliers that sign for our services. So anyone that is getting started in reporting, it's a lot of training, emailing, hunting people down for information, and basically trying to, make a reality all the wants and wishes like the sales team has promised this new supplier. So it's definitely a different dynamic. It's always interesting. But I really think through the company I work for, there's a lot of support internally. We are an employee-owned company, so it's a really great feeling knowing that everyone kind of has a role and plays into the success of the company. And so that's really what we strive for. I'd say since BIP, some pretty great highlights have been really nailing down, a work-life balance. That was really important to me. And it wasn't something that I was really focused on right after graduation, because I was really just focused on finding a job and being able to pay bills and all that stuff. But it is really important. And I think the company that I work for and, hopefully the companies that you guys are interested in also value that, because it is really important to, have a good balance between work and also other things that can fill you in your life. So yeah, and I would just say that, if you guys can keep an open communication with your professors and just talk with them, that was something I always was doing here. They really have your best interest and, really can teach you a lot just about how to communicate with people. So yeah, that's it. And visit Ingrid and have a look over your resume. That really helped me. And yeah.
Thank you. Sounds like we might have Dimitri. There might be some feedback on his speaker, his voice. I'm not sure. So we're going to do the best we can to try and hear what he has to say. You can hear me.
You should be on because this plate.
How the remix.
In San Francisco, you speak a different language.
Can you hear us, Dimitri?
Hello. Can I get thumbs up? Does this work?
Yes.
We can hear you, yes.
He can see you as well.
Oh, he can see
The
us.
camera is right next to Steve.
Can I get a thumbs up? People hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
No thumbs up.
Too late for that.
Can you hear us, Dimitri? Go ahead.
Okay. Holy shit, there's gonna be. Looking at you. Whoever has Zoom, if you could hit mute, that would get rid of. Okay.
to build a taxonomy and to essentially data mine to project ahead of time to say, hey, Six Sigma is in demand, or hey, we need to invest in so-and-so. And basically produce reports to better inform public policy and legislators as to what will be in demand, as opposed to traditional labor market. BLS data is historically lacked, so this was kind of a little ahead of its time. Let's see, my next gig after that was at the Georgetown Center for Research on Higher Education and the Labor Market, and pretty similar. Basically, looking at public data, informing public policy as to what's going on, and again, it's kind of pinpoints to how econ makes you think, how some of these courses make you wonder about trade-offs, about looking at data a bit more carefully than maybe someone who doesn't take the stats and econometrics and understand some of those nuances and all the dynamics that can happen. And ultimately, I was looking for something a little more fast-moving with a bit more impact. I mean, the work we did at Georgetown School, it hits the Wall Street Journal and so on, but ultimately it's still conditional on politicians making decisions, which usually those two forces don't go hand in hand. So I got a job at Postmates, which was kind of a pioneer of on-demand delivery space. I'm sure we're actually a quick plug. We are in Burlington. It goes all the way to Colchester and Shelburne. Check it out. I'll send some codes your way. But basically, instead of just being constrained to Domino's, you can order from a bunch of different places to your dorm. And yeah, we are doing almost 8 million deliveries a month. It's a lot. We're mainly in the US. About to go, we're pre-IPO, so there's still a bunch of things to a lot of fires to put out every day. And currently I run a team on the fulfillment pod. So basically it's about 100, it's a team of about 80 people and about 10 analysts of those. Analysts, data scientists, engineers, designers, product managers, and every day we're building products and features to improve the experience for all of our customers, basically. And that's not just the couriers and the restaurants, it's obviously our customers who order, and it's a really complicated problem space. Logistics, I mean, Amazon and UPS kind of have it down, but we need to work within constraints of, is it okay for a pizza to show up 60 minutes late? Probably not. You're probably going to churn. And working with more complicated payloads. So basically, we have to establish a lot of dashboards, monitoring, alerting, always trying to balance supply and demand. It sounds really easy. Marketplace is actually really hard. So when you have a disbalance, we try to get incentives out to the fleet. We try to automate these things. So a lot of the work is done in SQL and Python. Some people work in R. I know there's some exposure to SPSS and Stata at St. Mike's. I saw there's a data science track now, which is awesome. I highly encourage you guys to go and do that, because these skills are literally, it's stuff we use every day. And it's not like just because you learn what a regression is or what how to do ANOVA tests, it doesn't mean you're set for a while. People here, at least out kind of in the tech world, you're learning new methods and almost new languages every quarter. It changes really quickly, and it's kind of scary in a way. But yeah, I highly encourage you guys to go and take the math courses, take the stats courses, data science, but having a good hybrid combination of the econ theory and actually the practitioner side of it, which is kind of more on the heavy stats and the data science, is a super strong look coming out of college. At least seeing when I see resumes interviewing people on my team, that is a big plus. I don't know, I think I've spieled for quite a bit. I have you guys on mute because of the feedback, but I am happy to chat after or take questions, or I missed the format a little bit. Apologies.
I guess you can't hear me to say. Or maybe I should give him a thumbs up.
Give him a thumbs up.
Great. So we could open this up for questions that you have for the panelists. It's fascinating to hear all of your stories, and I'm always intrigued to learn about, I guess in my head as a psychology major in college, I always think or imagine that economics was really numbers based, and I'm always surprised to hear about how much writing and other communicating that you all do. And it really isn't just all about the numbers, although that's certainly a big part of it for many of you. So anyway, just open it up for questions. Yeah.
So Dimitri kind of talked about his senior thesis. I was wondering if you guys could touch on yours.
Sure, I'll go first. I wrote a thesis trying to value the national parks. And I did that in a few different ways. It was just a lot of I think 70% of the work was digging and finding the data myself, which was hard, but it made it so much more valuable to me. And then doing a lot of different types of statistical modeling and statistics to come up with what data needs to be thrown out, what data is important, and then trying to come up with different ideas of how, theoretical ideas of how evaluation of something like that should happen.
So I did a correlation of if height correlates with higher earnings. So you kind of hear a lot of things about presidents are all 6'2" and higher, and high up CEOs are always tall and stuff like that. So I had a big data set and looked at salaries compared to height, and then tried to figure out which there was a correlation. Taller people did earn more money, but then looking into kind of some different theses as to why maybe that was, could that be really purely because of their height, or was it because of something else? They got more attention when they were younger kids because they were taller and bigger and maybe seemed more mature than the other kids. So looking into kind of some reasons why that might be.
Mine was about hurricane recovery and whether or not the demographics of an area impact how quickly an area recovers. That had a very small data set. So if you are all looking at potential thesis topics, find a topic with a larger data set is all I can recommend.
My thesis was about changes in climate or temperature patterns in relation to criminal activity. So I had a data set for 30 years maybe of criminal activity, which is really scary to see how they track criminal activity, because there's not a lot of wasn't very reliable in my opinion, and clear. But then I also, compared and did regressions with changing temperature patterns. There's a lot of things that you could change. I did the whole selection set of the United States, but I think if I went to revisit it, I might kind of focus on certain areas to narrow down certain variables and stuff like that.
So the seniors this year are actually using Steve's and Marissa's, among several others, as some examples.
Fun.
That's great.
So.
Other questions?
So you kind of touched about how you had jobs after you graduated. You had something lined up, either it was an internship that helped lead into the summer thereafter. But what skills or mindsets do you think from economics helped you get those jobs? There is that period in between where you apply, you interview, you write applications, things like. What about economics do you think helped you with those puts in the door and getting those jobs for people now, going into interviews or putting in applications looking for jobs?
I'll start. I think a lot of it is economics taught me how to think differently. And I think because of that, it helped me sort of understand what type of questions might be asked in an interview type setting, and understand how I can use what I know use what I know and what I've learned to sort of spin those types of questions into something that I can answer, or sometimes I might not be able to answer them. So I guess I would stick with that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think more than the content of each class, it was more the way of thinking that it kind of brought to the table. And really just the St. Mike's community and the connections more than the specifically econ classes. Now in my job, the econ classes and what I learned in those classes comes into play more, maybe not so much in the decisions I'm making and what I'm doing every day, but in terms of the company and what I hear them talking about and decisions I hear them making, I feel like I have a much better understanding because of the econ major specifically.
So I second that, and this may not be what the professors want to hear, but I think besides just the econ department, I think it's the fact that St. Mike's is a liberal arts school. So you have a wide array of topics that you have taken classes in. And so you can pull from each of those, and you've probably taken classes you didn't particularly like, and that made you think harder in a different way, made you realize that you had to study differently. And all of that plays into how you interview, how you approach questions, and how you approach your first job, and not really knowing what's going to happen on day one is sort of self-explanatory where you're being introduced, but day 14, when orientation is over and you're at your desk and you're like, what do I do now?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything the panelists said. Asking critical questions, maybe questions that, other people aren't thinking of, or maybe things that have just been accepted as the norm. I think, also we can talk about a lot of things. We have a nice way of looking into and having insights into certain trends and stuff like that. So I think it was a really great experience, and then honestly, just the staff in this department and other departments here at EAP, not my company here at St. Mike's, but yeah, everyone's just super supportive and really just keeps open channels of communication. And I think that's really important when you enter the workforce, is not feeling afraid to ask questions and talking to your boss about things, and leading your own initiative in terms of putting your best foot forward and getting to work on time is important. Just little stuff like that, I think has really made the difference.
And I will also say the career counseling office is great for this sort of thing. They helped me with my resume as a senior, and then their job is not done just because you graduated. I called back in and they helped me revamp my resume when I was switching from Epic to CUNA Mutual. That's 2 years out from afar. I was on the phone with Chris Clary going through that. So very important resource.
Absolutely. Just because you graduate, we're always there for you. You can always call and use our services. Thank you. Very true. Anyone else? Yeah.
What do you guys think is a normal starting salary for a post-grad? What do you think is acceptable versus what's not acceptable?
I think you've probably heard this before, but it depends. Can I leave now? And it really does. That depends on the area of the country that you decide to move to. It depends on the types of jobs you want. So I don't know if I can really answer that question. I don't know if you guys have better insights than I do.
Just as an example, my older sister also went to St. Mike's, 1 year older than me, also an econ and math double major. And so she started working a year before I did in Boston. And then when I got my job, I was making significantly more than her, just because it was software development versus she was working as a faculty assistant at Harvard Business School. Both are great salaries, but it just depends on what field you end up in and what company you're working for.
Yeah, do you have any advice about what you can do to or what, I don't I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking at it like, if you move to a city and like you need money to like live and you're working a 40-hour-a-week job, I'm like what is like the route to go if you're like to maximize that? Like, do you have like any insight on it?
I mean, that was
know I'm
something.
super big. That makes no sense at all.
No, I mean, one thing I had to think about, because my job offer at PwC was in Boston,
Yeah.
and my other offer was here in Vermont, and so I had to kind of look at the salaries, which it was a little higher in Boston, but not that much higher to really cover that much higher of a rent and living expenses and just all that stuff from living in a city. So I did kind of have to think about that, and I would have had to get an offer that was quite a bit more than the one I had here in Vermont to have gone that route.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, it kind of sounds like you're interested in just knowing how you can make a good salary out of college. So maybe think about what you're interested in doing and look up online average salaries and stuff. It'll become pretty clear, I think, of what you like to do and are interested in, which are going to be a little bit more monetarily satisfying than others. So that's kind of what I would suggest, I guess.
And if you're looking in specific cities, like looking at what the cost of living is, looking at student loan payments, looking at car payments, looking at insurance, all that sort of stuff, figuring out how much you need to make and looking to see if that is a viable option for you. If you are moving to a different city, like when I moved to Madison, Epic paid for my relocation expenses. It came a month later, so like with my first paycheck, so I had to make sure I had the money to cover that first month. But those are also options that may or may not be available to you.
Other questions?
Come on, folks, don't be shy. Go ahead.
Is it less like the opportunity cost of going to get a master's degree versus just a 4-year?
I was just gonna say it depends. But like, but like, I mean, like, kind of, what do you want to do if you want to do something like in banking? You can get a master's degree, you can get an MBA, but almost just as valuable now is taking the CFA, which is the Chartered Financial Analyst test, which is a 3-part test. It's a lot cheaper than a master's program. You might have to work more. It depends how good you are at taking tests. A lot of times they say you need just hundreds of hours of studying for them. But I know, especially in banking, it's not always as helpful right after school to get an MBA because that you still don't have the same type of experience. So like if you haven't worked for a while, I think my company at least, it's tougher to get a job. Although I will say you can get more lucrative jobs, different types of banks, different types of maybe private equity groups or whatever. But even with those, you still need either a connection or you need some type of experience. So that's what I know, I guess.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to start working after college, start making money and paying off student loans and whatnot. So that was the kind of the most important thing for me right away. And then the other thing for me, I guess, once I started working at National Aid, they have programs where they will help pay for some of master's programs if you want to. So that would be, I haven't taken advantage of that yet, but that's a good option to kind of think about. And, I think it's a smart thing to be thinking about, though, and not to just be assuming I should be going right on to get my MBA, but to really be thinking what is more valuable. And I think, like he's saying, experience really is, I think is really valuable as well. So, I mean, if you can do both, I think great. But yeah, I mean, you're going to be spending more money to get that master's, and is it worth the money and the time that you're not getting experience at a job?
Similar to what he said, in the investment field, you've got your series of exams. They just changed the format. So the first one's like your SIE exam, and then there's your Series 7 and Series 65, Series 66 that are all needed to sell investment products. And so if you're looking to go into the investment field, maybe looking into those exams and what knowledge you'll need for that instead. For the actuarial field, there are the actuarial exams. So you might not necessarily need a master's degree for some of these, but just knowing what is expected for future knowledge from here to there.
Cool.
Can I? Oh, go ahead. Wait, that doesn't go.
No, we're both gonna do this, so why don't you go? Oh, you have a question.
Great.
Leaving the econ stuff aside, just general advice for starting a new job and being successful when you don't feel totally prepared.
That's a good question. So I think experience, doesn't matter what type of experience is. If you have had a job before, that is always going to be helpful in the skills you learn from like showing up on time and like being early, and especially when you're new, like knowing to be there earlier and trying not to like skirt out right at 5 and like those types of things. I think those are important. So where sometimes you might not feel as confident, especially if you've had some type of job or if you worked really hard at school and you've had a job here, I think those things are ways to help you feel confident. And I think confidence is key a lot of times. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you get your foot in the door, just work hard. Don't be afraid to bring new ideas to the table, fresh ideas. Don't be afraid to kind of bring up new things that maybe the people that have been working on the team haven't thought of. And people will really recognize and acknowledge just someone who's hardworking and not afraid to have their own ideas. And yeah.
I also recommend finding a mentor. When I started at Epic, everyone who starts at Epic is assigned a mentor, and it's just someone you can go to with silly questions like, where is lunch?
Yeah.
And those sort of like silly things that like you feel a little silly asking your manager these questions, and so just having someone there to ask those. And they can also at CUNA and at Putnam, the person who's been acting as my mentor at each of those companies has also been really good at like helping guide my path at the company. And so there are in your corner as someone who will vouch for you as well.
One thing I see at my work a lot, just because it's kind of a mix between, customer service and developers and stuff, is a lot of people have headphones in when they're at work listening to things. I would suggest never keeping headphones in. Always keep your ears open about what's going on in the office, because that can spark conversations between, you and someone else or a coworker about, issues you may have, seen that maybe you were struggling with by yourself, but then you hear that someone else is going through it as well. And that just, it's just kind of hard when you're kind of in your own little world zoned out. And I've done it as well, but it really does help to keep your ears open and kind of just pay attention to what's around you. If your work has any, like clubs or activities going on, that's another good way to like meet people. Where I work, we have, a gym there and different, sports courts like at work. So like we try and go out and play sports during lunch. That's a great way to meet people and fun way to just like meet people in different departments and just get to know different people, and just a friendly face around the office is just very nice to have.
I will also say you're not supposed to know everything when you first start, so like don't be shy about asking questions. I had to learn that kind of the hard way.
So just going off that point, my question was regarding how steep the learning curve was to transition to your respective jobs, and maybe how much of what you've learned maybe 4 years here do you use on a daily basis or not?
I'll go first. So learning curve was, it was high, but it wasn't steep. There was a lot of time spent like learning a certain skill and sort of mastering that before you sort of move on to something else. I think for the econ part, I think a lot of the theory courses and understanding why companies need capital and how that translates to like their working cash flows, those types of things that I like touched upon were really interesting, and like taking a lot of those ideas helped me like kind of bypass some of the extra thinking that I had to do, since I already had a lot of that type of stuff in my brain. And so, but I don't know if every single thing that I learned is super applicable to my job, but I do notice as I move up higher and I'm meeting with more people, a lot of the topics are things that everyone else knows too. So you can bring up things that are just econ topics that people will sort of understand, and they'll appreciate you, or a lot of times they'll think that you did that type of studying on your own because I don't know what they did in their colleges, but sometimes they didn't like get those base foundations, or they weren't econ majors. But it's, so you sort of have a leg up a little bit if you like know a lot of the theories and fundamentals, I think, as you keep going up and up, or across and across, or whatever.
I'd say when I first started, the curve was not super steep. I was testing the illustration system, and I had someone who was much more experienced with me, providing me with test cases that I would then run, and that had expected results. So it really wasn't too rigorous right when I started. It really became more up and up as I started to take on more responsibilities, and specifically when I started doing the development of the output. I was not a computer science major. I took one computer science class that was required for math, so I had to learn development, and so that was a little bit steeper learning curve. I had to learn about different life insurance regulations, which can vary by state, and really there was just a lot more of a learning curve because there's a whole lot more that goes into developing the reports than kind of just testing based on pre-made cases. In terms of the econ, I agree. I think it's really just being able to listen to and participate in conversations in an educated way. I don't necessarily set rates or buy options or do that kind of stuff, but I hear talk of that all the time, and I'm able to be much more educated on it and know more what's being said than I feel like if I didn't have my economics background.
For me, my learning curve when I started Epic was very steep because I was learning 2 new software languages in a month, and learning how to code within this behemoth of a software package that already existed. And then when I started at CUNA and Putnam, it's really just learning the industry, because a lot of what I do is in Excel and SQL, which I already know from either St. Mike's or Epic. As far as the economics knowledge, did not use it at Epic at all. And then at CUNA, I used it a little bit more, and then now at Putnam, it definitely plays in because whether or not people are investing or pulling money out to put in cash is very dependent on the economy. So the sales floor has meetings every other week just to get a general overview of the economy. And so I recognize all of that knowledge and why what's happening is happening from classes here.
I would say that my learning curve was it wasn't steep. When I initially started, I was working on a team that was basically building a new program. And I was kind of one of the test users of it. So it wasn't steep, I would say. There was a lot of collaboration between the team, and it was kind of just we were literally in a room together. It's called the Blue Room, and we just, had daily stand-up meetings where we would just talk and be very open with one another about the challenges we were facing. And I think that kind of led to, just it felt very supported there. So, and then the other 2 positions that I kind of fell into, I would say are a little steeper of a learning curve because you already have the experience and you already have the knowledge of the company. So they kind of just let you go and see where you kind of fall. So you really rely on you to take the reins and kind of make your own path a little bit more. So that's just my experience with that.
Anyone else have a question?
Yes. So I noticed with looking for jobs that even entry-level positions are always bachelor's degree and 1 or 2 years of experience. And I was wondering how you guys got around that, or I'm a senior right now, so I was wondering ways I could, things that I could prepare myself for, do now while I still have the time.
Apply anyway.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I
People,
think,
especially women, will look at a job description and say, I don't meet every single one of these requirements. They will not look at my application. That is not true. Apply anyway.
yeah, I mean, I remember thinking that too at first, and then realizing it was sort of like, well, it looks like I'm not gonna be able to apply to a single job, sort of, like, and then I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna throw my hat into like a bunch of different rings that sound interesting to me. And then I think some of the most important things are just like trying to connect with people and understanding what the job is before you apply, because that will help you weed things out and help you not have to write cover letters for them. And I, like, as much as you possibly can, try to like connect with people to understand what they do. And if you show an interest in something, then they'll be, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I have a friend who is really interested in this too and works for this company. And then you can talk with them, and I guess it's technically networking, but I wouldn't call it that. I would just call like being interested in things and people, so.
So this is a bit of a more of a different question, but like at times, like especially like for me, like I sometimes feel like I'm like in a different world compared to my family, like being in college, going from classes, and it enables me to do a lot of things, but also doesn't enable me to do a lot of other things. That transition from like being in like your own sphere into the real world where like a lot of things impact you from like daily news and just that transition to sense to realize that there's much, much more around you now. What helped you with that transition? Is like looking at the newspaper, watching the news, you pick a hobby? Like what helped you go from being a student to a worker?
I could start again. Kind of like talking.
Well, it's alphabetical.
Yeah, exactly. So I will kind of say I do not, and hopefully will never, like label myself as a worker. I think I'm continuously still learning, and I probably was more in tune with like the news and stuff that was going on when I was at school. Now it's like, I think now once I'm out of school, it's easier to create your own bubbles and create your own worlds. And like, I also am a swim coach, and I do that, and I am so into swimming that I don't have a lot of other time for other things now. And like I think you think like, oh man, I really have to know about what's going on with the economy, but like I'll look up, while I'm at work, I'll do all that research, but then when I'm home, I'm still my own person. I still like read books a lot and that kind of stuff. So.
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was just kind of the change in what my routine was. In college, you have classes kind of scattered throughout the day, and you might go to the library between or the gym between, or maybe none of that. You just go home and hang out, and then you go to the library at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know, but in the working world, it's not flexible like that. So I think that was kind of the biggest change for me, is just not being able to so much do what I wanted and needed to do at that moment, like I could do here. It's like, well, I got to be at the office from 9 to 5, so I got to do what I need to do. Other than that, other times. So it's just that transition of routine. And once I got into it, I like it a lot. I like having that routine, but that was kind of the biggest change, I guess, for me.
For me, my starting class at Epic was 500 people. And so I think having that many people that you start with, you find friends in that group. And so like you kind of just make your way together. And whether, like looking back on it now, like, should I have set up like a dedicated time every month to like pay my bills? Probably. Did I pay them eventually? Yes.
Auto pay.
I know.
And also, there was something else I was gonna say. For like, I love keeping up with the news, but I don't have time to pick up the newspaper, so I subscribe. I think think I get like 6 daily newsletters in my inbox every day.
Yeah.
I do not read all of them. My 2 that I usually read are Need to Know and Morning Brew, just to get business knowledge and general news stuff.
I'm gonna say time. The first year out of college, even though I was working, was really tough. Just getting used to that new routine, and kind of finding my own way, and really finding out what I wanted to do when I wasn't at work. Because there was dedicated times where I was at work, and all of a sudden I have the weekends free, and I don't have to do homework. And what do I want to do? So just kind of like finding other things to fill your time, reading, listening to podcasts if you want to catch up on things like that. It's always a great one to do on your way into work or on your way home. Yeah, I don't know, staying active, just keeping your mind healthy too, and all that good stuff.
So I am gonna sort of cut things off here a little bit because I want to leave time for you to be able to chat with the panelists individually. First, I would like to thank the econ department for, helping us put this together, for getting all of you here. Professor Popovich in the back of the room. I think between econ and business, I think that's all the faculty members here. So thank you all. Particularly thank you to the panelists, including Dimitri. Thank you for your patience and your patience with trying to get the technology figured out. I'm going to check in with Dimitri, and if you all specifically have questions, reach out to me, send me an email and let me know, and I'm gonna ask him if it's okay if I share his email with you, so, yes.
As the oldest guy in this room, I'm gonna have the last word as always. I think on the behalf of the big chief, the dean of the faculty, Tara, business department, and my college economics department, I want to thank you first, Ingrid, for putting this panel together. We are very grateful to you. But above all, I want to thank all 5 of you, especially as older faculty. You don't know how wonderful and rewarding for me and my colleagues to see the fruit of our labor. We are so grateful to all of you taking time from your busy schedule and talk to our students. It was a wonderful thing to do. And please come see us again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So please feel free to grab whichever alum or more than one that you want to chat with a little bit.
Help yourself with some food too.
So that they don't roll off the table. And don't forget there are snacks in the back. Maybe have you also spread out a little bit, so thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Yeah. Really, really.
I looked over on the side.
There's no reason not to, because it's like so much easier. Did you have like an idea of what you wanted to represent? Not really. I worked as a night teller one summer, and then I did work at a bank. So it's like because either kind of like it was the matter of consulting. I had a couple job offers for consulting. They were kind of, it was kind of just like this one made more sense financially. So that's kind of why. But like cast wide net, I also like actually asked for help because so because of that, because I didn't ask for help, I had to do a lot of that like stuff on my own, which is like so much harder if you don't have someone else helping you. So like they can help you like getting angry. But yeah. Did you ever bring up this? Yeah, Yeah, I think it's like, I think, in like banks, especially a lot of times, they're like impressed when you're actually kind of like having decent things.